The rain pounded against the windows of a Abasi law firm in downtown Nairobi, matching the frantic rhythm of 10-year-old Amara Okafor's heart. Her small hands clutched a worn photograph as she stood in the sleek reception area, water dripping from her braided hair onto the polished marble floor. The receptionist, a woman with kind eyes named Ms. Kumba, observed the child with concern. "I need to see Mr. Abasi," Amara declared, her voice stronger than her trembling body suggested. "It's about my mother. She's innocent and in prison." Ms. Kumba's expression softened. "Do you have an appointment, little one?" "No," Amara admitted, "but this can't wait. Please. My Auntie Farai doesn't know I'm here." Before Ms. Kumba could respond, the elevator doors opened, revealing Makena Abasi, the firm's most renowned defense attorney. At 42, Makena was an imposing figure, tall with broad shoulders, his closely cropped hair showing distinguished flecks of gray. His reputation for taking on impossible cases had spread throughout Kenya and beyond. "Ms. Kumba, I'm heading to court. Any messages?" His deep voice filled the space. "Sir," Ms. Kumba began hesitantly, "this young girl." Amara didn't wait for an introduction. She bolted toward him, nearly slipping on the wet floor. "Mr. Abasi. Please help my mother. They took her away 3 months ago, and my Auntie Farai says she'll be in prison forever, but she didn't do anything wrong." Makena looked down at the child, startled by her outburst. Something in her eyes, their shape, the intensity of her gaze, caused him to pause. He'd planned to gently dismiss her, to explain that he couldn't speak with minors without guardians present, but instead, he knelt to her level. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softening. "Amara Okafor." Makena's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "And your mother's name?" "Zola Okafor." The name hit him like a physical blow. 15 years had passed since he'd heard it spoken aloud, though he thought of her often. Memories flooded back, university days, passionate debates about justice and reform, promises made and broken. Their relationship had ended abruptly when he'd chosen to pursue his legal career abroad. "What happened to her?" he asked, struggling to maintain his professional composure. "They say she stole money from the bank where she works, but she didn't. She told me she was trying to stop someone else, but nobody believes her." Amara thrust the photograph toward him. "This is her. Please help." Makena accepted the photograph, and his heart stopped. There was Zola, still beautiful, her smile unchanged by time. And beside her stood this child, a child whose age and features suddenly made devastating sense. "Where are you staying now?" he asked, his mind racing with calculations and possibilities. "With Auntie Farai, my mother's sister. But she says we can't afford a lawyer." Makena stood, decision made. "Ms. Kumba, call the courthouse. Tell Judge Osei I'll be delayed. Then contact Ms. Farai Okafor and ask her to come here immediately." He turned back to Amara. "I'll help your mother. I promise." What he couldn't say, what he barely allowed himself to think, was that the determined girl standing before him with Zola's eyes and his own stubborn chin might very well be his daughter. The conference room of a Abasi law firm felt too small for the emotional weight it now contained. Makena sat across from Farai Okafor, whose hostile glare had not softened since her arrival an hour ago. Between them, Amara clutched a cup of hot chocolate, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. "You have no right," Farai hissed, her voice low enough that Amara couldn't hear. 15 years of silence, and now you want to play hero." "I didn't know," Makena responded, maintaining his composure. "Zola never told me she was pregnant." "She tried," Farai countered. "Your secretary said you were too busy building your career in London to take her calls." The accusation stung because it contained truth. After graduating from Nairobi University with honors, Makena had accepted a prestigious position with an international firm. He'd convinced himself that the clean break would be better for both of them. Now, looking at Amara, at his daughter, he recognized the magnitude of his mistake. "I want to see Zola," he said firmly. "And I need the case files." Farai leaned forward. "Why should I trust you now? We've managed without you for this long. Because your sister is facing 15 years for embezzlement, and I'm the best chance she has." While the adults spoke, Amara studied Makena's face with growing curiosity. There was something familiar about the way his eyebrows furrowed when he concentrated, the same way hers did when she worked on difficult math problems. "Mr. Abasi," she interrupted, "do you have a picture of when you were my age?" The question caught both adults off guard. Makena hesitated before reaching for his wallet. He extracted a small, worn photograph of himself at 9, standing proudly beside his father outside their modest home in Kisumu. Amara examined it closely, then looked up with widening eyes. "You look like me," she whispered, not as a question but a revelation. Farai closed her eyes briefly, recognizing the moment of discovery she'd feared for years. "Amara, Mr. Abasi and your mother were friends a long time ago." "More than friends," Makena corrected gently. He met Amara's gaze directly. "I think I might be your father." The conference room fell silent. Outside, Nairobi's afternoon traffic created a distant hum. Amara looked from the photograph to Makena's face, connecting pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed. "Does Mom know you're back in Kenya?" she finally asked. "No," Makena admitted. "I returned 6 months ago to open this firm." "Is that why she's been sad?" Even before the arrest. The innocent question revealed volumes about Zola's lingering feelings, and Makena felt a fresh wave of regret wash over him. "I need to see her case files," he repeated to Farai. Not as a stranger or an ex-boyfriend, but as Amara's father. Farai studied him, weighing years of resentment against Zola's desperate situation. "Fine," she finally conceded, reaching into her bag. "But understand this, if you disappoint them again, if this is some kind of temporary guilt trip before you vanish back into your privileged life, I will never forgive you." She slid a manila folder across the table. Zola was the whistleblower, not the criminal. She discovered the fraudulent accounts and reported them to her supervisor. 2 days later, the money was gone, and somehow all evidence pointed to her. Makena opened the folder and began scanning documents with practiced efficiency. As he read, his expression darkened. "This isn't just embezzlement," he muttered. "This is a sophisticated frame job. The question is, who stands to benefit from silencing Zola?" Amara moved to stand beside him, peering at the documents. "Mom always says to follow the money." Makena glanced at his newly discovered daughter with surprised admiration. "Your mother taught you well," he said. "And that's exactly what we're going to do." The women's maximum security facility at Langata stood imposing against the afternoon sky, concrete walls topped with razor wire gleaming in the sun. Makena parked his Mercedes outside, acutely aware of the privilege his car represented in this place of confinement and despair. "Wait here," he instructed Farai and Amara. "First meetings with clients are confidential." "She's not just a client," Farai objected. "Today she is," Makena countered. "If I'm going to free her, I need to separate my personal feelings from my legal strategy." Inside, after surrendering his phone and passing through 3 security checkpoints, Makena was led to a small interview room. His heart pounded as he heard footsteps approaching from the other side. When the door opened, revealing Zola in a faded blue prison uniform, Makena struggled to maintain his professional demeanor. Her once vibrant face appeared hollow, dark circles shadowing her eyes. Still, when she recognized him, the shock that spread across her features transformed her. "Makena," she whispered, frozen in the doorway. "What are you?" "Your daughter found me," he said simply. Zola sank into the chair opposite him, her hands trembling slightly. "Amara went to your office." "How did she even know about you?" "She didn't. She just knew I was a lawyer who takes impossible cases." He reached across the table, but stopped short of touching her hands. "Why didn't you tell me, Zola?" "About Amara." Anger flashed in her eyes. "I tried. 6 different times. Your secretary said you were building your future and couldn't be disturbed." Makena closed his eyes briefly. "Shabet. She was following my instructions, but not for the reasons you think. I was a coward, Zola. I convinced myself you'd be better off without me, that my ambition would only hurt you in the end. And now? Why are you here now? Because our daughter believes in you. And because I never stopped," he caught himself, returning to safer ground. "Because this case against you is full of holes, and I intend to dismantle it piece by piece." For the next hour, they reviewed her case. Zola explained how she'd discovered irregularities in accounts managed by the bank's chief financial officer, Edmund Katundu. After reporting her concerns, security camera footage was mysteriously edited, showing her accessing the vault at times she'd been in meetings. Edmund has connections to government officials, Zola explained. When the money disappeared, everyone was eager to close the case quickly. I was the perfect scapegoat. We need to follow the money, Makena said, repeating Amara's words. Kitunda couldn't have moved that amount without leaving traces. Be careful, Zola warned. There are powerful people involved in this. People who wouldn't hesitate to hurt you or, her voice broke. How is she? Amara. Brilliant. Brave. Stubborn. A smile tugged at his lips. She reminds me of you. Farai says she looks like you, Zola countered. Acts like you too. Their eyes met, 15 years of separation momentarily bridged. Then a guard rapped on the door, signaling time was up. I'm going to get you out of here, Makena promised, gathering his notes. And when I do, we have a lot to talk about. Zola nodded, vulnerability showing through her composed exterior. Makena, regardless of what happens with my case, don't disappear from her life again. She deserves better than that. So do you, he replied softly. I'm not the same man who left, Zola. And I'm not going anywhere. As he walked back to the car, he found Amara waiting expectantly. Is Mom okay? Did she tell you she's innocent? Makena knelt to her level. Your mother is strong, just like you. And yes, she's innocent. Now we just have to prove it. We will, Amara said with absolute certainty. Because you're her lawyer now. And you're my dad. The simple declaration, delivered with a child's straightforward confidence, left Makena speechless. In that moment, he made a silent vow, nothing would stop him from reuniting this family, his family. The offices of Mwangi International Bank loomed over Nairobi's financial district, its glass facade reflecting clouds that promised afternoon rain. Inside, Makena straightened his tie as he waited in the executive reception area, a heavy leather briefcase resting on his lap. 3 days of intense investigation had led to this moment. Mr. Abasi, a smooth voice announced, Mr. Kitunda will see you now. Edmund Kitunda's office occupied the building's top floor, offering panoramic views of the city. The CFO himself stood by the window, a stocky man with expensive tastes evident in his tailored suit and gold watch. Counselor, he greeted without warmth. I understand you're representing Zola Okafor. A waste of your talents, I must say. I disagree, Makena replied coolly. The evidence against Ms. Okafor seems remarkably convenient. Kitunda gestured to a chair. The evidence speaks for itself. 40 million shillings doesn't simply vanish. Security footage caught her at the vault after hours. Her passwords were used to authorize the transfers. Interesting points, Makena acknowledged, opening his briefcase. Though it's curious that in 15 years of service, Ms. Okafor never showed signs of financial distress. No gambling debts, no lavish purchases. Meanwhile, 4 days after her arrest, you acquired a vacation property in Mombasa worth 38 million shillings. Kitunda's expression hardened. My finances aren't relevant to this case. The court might disagree. Makena removed a document and slid it across the desk. Especially when cell tower data places you near the bank at 2:17 a.m. on the night of the theft, the exact time the security footage of Ms. Okafor was supposedly recorded. You're overstepping, counselor, Kitunda warned, but Makena detected the first flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Perhaps. But I'm also wondering about your connection to Minister Kariuki and why his office pressured the prosecutor to expedite Ms. Okafor's case. The mention of Kariuki's name visibly rattled Kitunda. You should be careful about making unfounded accusations. They're quite well-founded, Makena countered, producing more documents. These bank records show transfers from offshore accounts linked to you into companies owned by Minister Kariuki's family. Money laundering disguised as legitimate business. Kitunda's face darkened with anger. Get out. Now. I've already scheduled a meeting with the Anti-Corruption Commission, Makena continued calmly. But I'm offering you a choice, confess to framing Ms. Okafor and testify against Kariuki, or face the consequences alone. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Kitunda hissed. Kariuki can destroy you with a phone call. Perhaps, Makena conceded, standing to leave. But I've already ensured that if anything happens to me, or to the Okafor family, these documents go directly to every major news outlet in East Africa. He closed his briefcase with a decisive click. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Outside, Makena's confident facade cracked slightly as he called his investigator, Jabari. Stay with Farai and Amara. Don't let them out of your sight. That evening, as he reviewed his notes in his apartment, a knock at the door startled him. Hand hovering near the phone, he approached cautiously. Who is it? Your secretary, sir. Ms. Kumba. There's been a development. Relief washed over him as he opened the door, only to freeze at the sight of two men flanking a terrified Ms. Kumba. Mr. Abasi, one man said pleasantly, Minister Kariuki would like a word. Before Makena could react, he felt a sharp sting in his neck, and the world began to blur. His last conscious thought was of Amara and Zola, and the promise he might not be able to keep. Consciousness returned to Makena in painful fragments, first the throbbing in his head, then the cold hardness of concrete beneath him. Opening his eyes, he found himself in what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse, moonlight filtering through broken windows. Nearby, Minister Kariuki sat in an expensive chair, looking incongruously elegant against the decrepit surroundings. Councillor Abasi, Kariuki observed. A brilliant legal mind, they say. Yet not brilliant enough to mind your own business. Makena tested his restraints, zip ties, cutting into his wrists. Kidnapping a lawyer seems unwise, even for you, Minister. Kariuki laughed without humor. No one witnessed your departure. And sadly, accidents happen to even the most prominent citizens. A chill ran through Makena, but he maintained his composed expression. The evidence is already secured. Harming me won't change that. Perhaps not, Kariuki conceded. But it will serve as a warning to others. And your mysterious evidence will be dismissed as the desperate fabrications of a man trying to free his former lover. The minister's words confirmed what Makena had suspected. Kariuki knew about his relationship with Zola. You've overlooked something crucial, Makena said, stalling for time while surreptitiously working at his restraints. I wasn't alone in my investigation. As if on cue, the warehouse door burst open, flooding the space with blinding light. Police officers swarmed in, followed by the director of the Anti-Corruption Commission herself. Minister Kariuki, Director Onyango announced, you're under arrest for corruption, money laundering, and now, the attempted murder of Councillor Abasi. Kariuki's face contorted with rage and disbelief. How? The tracking device in my watch, Makena explained as an officer cut his restraints. When I realized Kitunda might talk, I took precautions. Everything that happened here was recorded and transmitted to the commission in real time. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of the courthouse as Judge Osei reviewed the emergency motion before her. Zola, still in prison attire but with her dignity intact, stood beside Makena as he presented the evidence of her innocence, Kitunda's signed confession, bank records proving Kariuki's involvement, and the restored security footage showing Kitunda, not Zola, accessing the vault. In light of this overwhelming evidence, Judge Osei declared, this court orders the immediate release of Ms. Zola Okafor, with all charges dismissed. She fixed a stern gaze on the prosecutor. Furthermore, the court recommends investigation into the handling of this case from its inception. Outside the courthouse, journalists gathered as Zola emerged into freedom for the first time in months. Amara broke away from Farai, running headlong into her mother's arms. I told you we'd free you, Mom, she exclaimed through tears of joy. Mr. Abasi helped, just like I knew he would. Zola lifted her gaze to Makena, standing slightly apart to give them space. Yes, she agreed softly. He did. As cameras flashed and reporters called questions, Makena stepped forward. Ms. Okafor was the victim of a sophisticated frame, orchestrated by those she tried to expose. Her courage in reporting the initial fraud cost her freedom, but today, justice has prevailed. Hours later, after the media frenzy had subsided, Makena found himself in Farai's modest apartment, watching as Amara proudly showed Zola her schoolwork from the months she'd been away. The domesticity of the scene stirred something profound within him. What happens now? Zola asked quietly, joining him by the window. Legally. Kariuki and Kitunda will face trial. The bank has already issued a public apology and offered compensation. That's not what I meant, she said, meeting his gaze directly. Makena took a deep breath. 15 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life, walking away from us. I told myself it was ambition, but truthfully, it was fear that I couldn't be the man you deserved. He glanced at Amara, laughing with her aunt across the room. I missed everything. Her first words, first steps. I can never get that back. No, Zola agreed. You can't. But if you'll allow it, he continued, I'd like to be here for everything else. Not just as her father, but... He hesitated. Zola, the feelings I had for you never disappeared. They just waited, dormant, until I was worthy of them. Zola studied him, years of hurt visible in her eyes, but something else too, hope, cautious but real. We're not the same people we were, Makena. We've both changed. I know. That's why I'm not asking for the past back. I'm asking for a chance at a new future, together, if you'll have me. Before she could answer, Amara approached, looking between them with perceptive eyes. Are you going to be around more now? She asked Makena directly. He knelt to her level, just as he had that first day in his office. If that's what you want, yes. Always. Amara considered this with solemn deliberation. Good. Because I have a lot of questions. About laws and courts and... She hesitated. And about you. About why you were gone. I'll answer every question, Makena promised. No more secrets, no more absences. As evening settled over Nairobi, the three of them remained together, beginning the delicate work of healing old wounds and building something new. Outside, rain began to fall, not the desperate downpour of that first day, but a gentle cleansing shower, washing away the past and nourishing possibilities yet to bloom. Justice had been served in the courtroom, but the greater justice, the restoration of a family too long divided, was only just beginning.